Hi, I'm Kathy from Stitch It Together. This video is meant for my students who have already taken a certification class, but may need to review just a little bit if it's been a bit of a time since you've been here about how to load my machine. And for convenience, I am going to also demonstrate the edge-to-edge tier of QCT so that if you need a refresher on that one, you have one as well. So always, I would like to just always say that this is the way that I do it. This is how I load my quilts. This is how I'm using QCT. I have great success with my way for me, but I do want you to be quite aware that not everyone loads their quilt the same way. And while it is important if you're renting a machine from me to baste your quilts in the event, if there's any chance at all that you're not going to get done in one session and you'll have to take it off and come back, you'll most definitely want to make sure that the whole thing is basted. But if for some reason you're watching this and you're not here for certification or to rent a machine, I think it's really important to know that this is, again, what works for me. Not everybody bastes their entire quilt ahead of time. That's how I do it. And so there are other ways of doing this. You should always try more than one method. And then in the end, you should do what works for you. This is what works for me. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to make a decision with my quilt. This is my quilt right here. And it is 37 inches wide and it is 56 inches long. And for me, the pattern that I already know that I'm going to use does have a direction. So while I would have the option to do it the long way, like this, my pattern is directional. And so I have decided that it has to be this way. So that's an important thing for you to decide before you get your quilt on the machine. You should pick which pattern, or have a good idea which pattern you want to use before you get on here, because remember that some patterns really are directional. So I know which direction my quilt is going, and this is my backing right here, and I know that it needs to go the long way. So I'm going to start by making sure I have an idler rail. That's what this rail is right here. I need to make sure that my leader, this is the leader. Oops, I need to unclamp here. It's going to go underneath the idler rail. There you go. I'm going to pull it all the way down. Pull the sheet out. And I can pull this about as far as it goes so that I have as much room as possible. And then I am going to put on my fabric. I use Renee's red snappers, and I start with the little small ones first, just to get it going. I have another one. I do. Now I'm going to get the big ones out, and I'm going to replace them with the big clamps. And I am lining up my edges with the line that's on the leader. I'm looking to not pull the fabric, to just lay it on the line and snap the snapper. And move as I go. Remember, your fabric is stretchable and flexible, and there is no 100% perfect. But when you're in this process, the one thing you really don't want to do is to be pulling or stretching your fabric out. You don't want to wrinkle, but you also don't want to pull that fabric too tight. Here we go. I might need one on the edge here. Okay. So I have the backing on, and I'm going to roll it loosely on my top rails. Straighten it out a little bit right here. And again, I'm not looking for the stack on this rail because I need to roll it back. So I'm just going to do this. Roll it loosely onto this one. Now I am going to secure it, because I don't float my quilt. I'm going to secure the backing to the backing rail right here, also called your belly bar. And I'll be looking at my ruler markings, as I have the tape measure right here to try and get that even in the same place, about right here. Looks good. Again, I'm lining up with a line that's already on my leader. I want to use the small one first. And I'm going to look on here and I see that that's about 22.5. And for this end, I'm looking for about 22.5, which is about there. Now get a larger one. Okay. Pinning this one to the belly bar. Okay. Okay. If you have a pucker, and I do just a little bit, you just pull it out, open it up to that point where you have the pucker, and remove it. Here we go. All right. So now I'm going to bring the backing back onto the backing rail or the belly bar right here, and I want it to now stack. Now I really do care if it's all lined up. And since this is just a width of fabric, I haven't had to cut any of this. It could stack pretty easily. Since my selvages are right here and right here, always at that. I want to bring this forward so it's at a point where I can easily baste along this line before I get started. And that's a good place right there, just for it to be. Now I'm going to get my batting. For us, the big large amounts underneath here. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to get my quilt top. Yes, it's the right direction. Okay. Since I have a large distance between the top and my rail here, I'm going to do two things. I want to have one clamp on the end of my leader, and then I'm going to bring the other one over to my fabric. That's going to help me while I baste this the first time. There we go. That's closed. All right. And I'll do the same thing to the other side here. Now, if you are someone who is using QCT Plus or Pro, I will have shown you how to pull up a straight line using QCT. But if you are using the other tiers or free motion quilting, you're going to want to see it this way. So that's what I'm going to show you next. So I am going to use this, which is a clamp to stop the rolling of the machine. It's a lock, channel lock. You can also use the ones that are on the machine. They're in the back of the machine or on the side of the machine so that it will keep a straight line for us. But I'm going to let you know that this one is the easier way to go. So what I want to do is pull my quilt top off just a little bit down here, because what I'm going to be doing the line is across the batting so that when I line up the quilt top, I'll know that it will be straight. So I'm going to put the channel lock on right where I want it to be, which is about right here. There we go. All right. So now it cannot move backwards and forwards. It will only go straight across. And that's what I want. And I'm going to pull my bottom up. Oops, there we go. I'm going to put this on baste. And I'm just going to couple lock stitches here. And then gently go across the quilt. We've got a nice straight line when I'm done. I'm going to now line up the quilt top so that the raw edges are right on that straight line. And I'm going to baste it again. This time, if you will remember that the most quilting feet, unless they say otherwise, at least the ones for Grace, they're about 1/4 inch from center where the needle is to where the outside of the foot is. So when I baste this on, it should be around 1/4 inch. And again, it's basting seam, so you can pull it out, but at 1/4 inch, you might even want to leave it in, and your binding will probably go right over the top of it. So this is nice and straight on here. Okay. Pull my thread, pull that bottom. And I do like to lock it a little bit. So I just go back and forth a few times. And then I'm just going to go real slow, because remember, when you're in the basting mode, and this is precise, so that when you stop, the machine stops. When you move, the machine moves. So if you need to zhuzh this a little bit to make sure that it's straight, you can. Just stop, and the machine will stop too. And so what I'm doing is I'm making sure that the edge, the back of the foot, is up against the raw edge. And that raw edge is right on that straight line that I've sewn. And when you're first starting, if you're not perfectly straight, remember, this comes out. And again, you're not trying to stretch your top in any way. You're just trying to hold it straight. So don't pull on it left to right too much, or you'll have some distortion in your quilting. Pick it up. Okay. So now that the top and all 3 layers are quilted and I have a straight line, I know that my quilt top is straight. I'm going to release my plants, my side plants. I'm going to roll this up just a little bit. So I want to make sure that my red snapper, if you don't have red snappers, you won't have to worry about that, has kind of gone underneath the idler rail so that I'm not having to mess with it too much. And I'm going to make sure that my tension is good on my fabric. And remember, you do not want it tight as a drum. Okay, I think that's one of the hardest things to get into your head when you're first starting. It certainly was a flaw of mine, was making the quilt sandwich. That's what these All three layers are called the quilt sandwich. Too tight. You really don't want it to be too tight. You want it just loose enough that it won't get, or just tight enough so that it won't get stuck on the machine when it's going across. And if you see any bouncing on it too much, like if you were to drop a coin on it and it would bounce off, you know that your layers are too tight. I've heard about the knuckle rule, that if you can put your finger underneath and push up to like your second knuckle, first or second knuckle, that then that's the right tightness. And I would say that that's probably true. Certainly if you can't, at least get a little give in there, you know it is too tight. So now with my machine, I have a very large machine and it's set at a very large height. So this distance from the idler rail to the belly bar will also accommodate my ruler plate. When that happens, that means that this distance from my idler rail to my belly bar is very large. And so here at Stitch It Together, when I have you do the basting, I always recommend that you baste on the left and the right sides, but you also go across the middle and then across the belly bar all the way to the end of your quilt. But we're not quite done yet. So the first thing I'm going to do is take off my channel lock here. And now I'm going to go down. I'm going to just go across the very bottom here. And here's the other thing that I like to do here is now I can move my tape measure to the top of the quilt so I can make sure that it's parallel this way and that way. All right. That's good. So I'm looking to see where on the tape measure it is up here, and it's at about roughly 20 and a half. And that's exactly where it is right here. So I don't need to move this edge. And I'm going to do the same over here. That looks about right to me. Okay. So I'm going to go down, cross. I'm going to go up and then back down again. Then I'm going to secure the bottom. So always pull your bottom. All right. And I have not put on my side fence, which now need to be on both sides. There we go. All right. Across down on the belly bar. And again, the edge of the foot is right along the edge of the raw edge of the quilt. So now what I want to do is, because I don't float my quilts, I need to attach the backing to the bottom rail. And in order to do that, I'm just going to fold this up a little bit, and I'm going to make sure that it's nice and the edges are meeting right here, so that they're parallel going this way. Then I'm going to pull up this leader, I'm gonna lay it over the top. Okay. I get my little starters. I'm going to use the tape measure to make sure that I'm roughly where it's supposed to be. That will help me. I'm going to make sure that I don't pick up the edge of the underside of the quilt, just the raw edge. I'm going to clamp this one. This one. I'm just going to start at one edge, and just like before, you're just going to line up the bottom edge of that quilt top with a line that I've sewn on the leader. Good. I'm going to roll the excess onto this bar, the bottom bar right here. And it doesn't have to be perfect for this one because you will have the opportunity, since I try and line up the size of my quilt with the measuring tape. This does not have to be perfect on this one because you get another shot when you're cutting off the rail to get it all squared up. So I just don't want it to be a mess. And I don't even have to tighten it all the way. All right, there we go. Now I'm going to take off the side clamps. I'm going to roll my quilt because I already have it basted to here. And so now I'm going to roll it up and I'm going to finish basting all the way down to the edge. Again, you don't want everything to be tight as a drum. And can you see it in this? The sewing machine is in the way, so let me move it. I would like to show you that if you get concerned about, oh no, the top of the quilt looks like it's not really straight, like up through here. Just remember that here's where my basting line is. This was right here. This was the belly bar, and I rolled it up. Here's where my basting line is right here. Even though it may look all wrinkled right here above that basting, it's not. So don't panic over that. It's just because there's no base or no sewing on the top of it that it looks like it's loose. So don't worry too much about that. You know that it's straight because you have the basting line right there. So that's all you need to look for. So you're gonna even out more layers. I'm gonna look again to see where are my edges. So it's supposed to be at 20.5. This one needs to be moved over just a little bit. So I'm gonna give it a little zhuzh. And this one is supposed to be at 16.5, and it is. I'm gonna check the tension, make sure I put my side clamps back on. Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to baste. I'm going to go down, I'm going to go across, I'll go up, I'll go all the way down, and then back this way and up a little way. So all you really want to make sure is that while it does seem like a little over stitching, I'm just basting. These are large basting stitches. They can come out or you can leave them in if your binding goes over the top of them. But remember, the ones that are going across the belly bar, you will be taking out as you sew. I know I have seen a lot of other filters, and there's nothing wrong with this. I did this the same way too. They say you should always baste from the bottom up, and there's nothing wrong with doing it that way. I changed my method just a little bit once I got a little more experienced when I got this bigger frame. And the reason it is a little bit more time consuming for me if I were to do it that way to only go in this direction, because when I need to go across the belly bar twice, because I have such a big frame right here, it was taking too long. So if you have a smaller frame, you may want to consider that. You may not need to go to do twice across your belly bar, maybe just once. And you might want to just go from the bottom up instead of in both directions when you're basting. That might help you. For me, this is what works best for me. Reach the end of the quilt, and I'm going to give some tugs and make sure that my batting is straight and that my back is straight. Give it a little tug. Now my bottom rail is not locked, so that when I'm pulling on it, it will have a bit of a more, it will spring back if it's too tight. I find that that helps an awful lot. But now what I'm going to be looking for in particular is to make sure with this measuring tape that these numbers at the top and at the bottom are matching as best they can. And it looks to me like they really are. So that's good. I have a square quilt here, which is good. If I didn't, if I had some a lot of unevenness in my quilt, this would be the opportunity for me to either take some of the stitching out and push some fabric back. Maybe your quilt is uneven or it's got some poofiness in it, a lot of poofiness in some areas and less than others. If you don't baste your quilt, you can end up with a mess at the end. This is why I started doing this. You could have pushed it all to the end and then you end up with kind of a mess right at the end. And if you've quilted it rather than basting it, there's really a lot harder to fix than if you baste it first and try and fix it before you actually start quilting. And that was one of the reasons that I find the basting to first all the way, the whole quilt first, to be that works for me. The other reason is that when I'm done basting this, I'm going to be able to cut my batting, because right now I don't have access to underneath my machine because of this leader and because of the batting. But I will be able to cut my batting and take the bottom, once this is basted on here, take this off, exposing this whole area, so I have easy access to my bobbin case and to look at my stitches under the machine. Thing is come here. We'll just fix it. It's a good time to remember about your bobbins. If you are using a pre-wound bobbin or one of the bobbins that you do on your own, you want the bobbin case that has the back spring in it. But if you're using one of the Magna-Glide, you want to find the My Bobbin case and take that does not have the backlash spring in it. Also remember that when you put the bobbin inside the bobbin case, you want it to have a little, when you touch it, it should spring back and forth or something's wrong with the backlash. And that when you put it into the little mechanism here and you pull on it, it should be going clockwise. So it looked like it just, those big stitches caused the string to break, and we're just going to, so there we go. Pull my bobbin again. No problem. We want to be careful about how far I'm going down because of my snapper here. Now that's about as far as it will go. Now looks good to me. Okay. So now my quilt is basted all the way down to the end. So I can take off. Now notice I'm doing this on the quilt top. This is not the backing. Don't undo your backing. You'll have a big problem if you do. But I'm taking off the snapper for the top because it is already now basted. And I can discard that. And now you can see I can roll this back up. So maybe you have a lot of batting or maybe you don't, but I have a lot of excess. So I am now going to cut not the backing, just the batting. There we go. And when I do that, now this area is open. So if I run out of bobbin or if I need to check on my stitches, I have easy access to this whole area. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll the whole quilt back onto the belly bar. There we go. Particularly when we're using the edge to edge tier, I want to make sure that where I'm starting my quilt, that I have a good 2 full inches from the idler rail. And just to be safe, I want to make sure that it's about 3 from the idler rail, because the edge-to-edge tier is very particular about how close you can be to your take-up rail. And when I get it to where I want, I'm gonna lock up the clamps. Return my side clamps. Okay, I'm good with all those. So now I'm going to get started with QCT. I'm going to switch my cameras. Let's see if I can get this back up here. What have I done? Let me pause this just a minute. Okay, I'm back. And so hopefully now you'll be able to see the screen and what I'm doing at the same time. So in order to get to the QCT edge to edge here on my computer, or if you have a higher and you want to get to the lower tier, a higher tier, you're going to hit this button right here. It says try other products. You're going to push where it says QTC6, just start. And you'll see it opens up in edge to edge. So I'm going to go ahead and start it. And if you need more help than what is available, you can use the QRC code right here and just go ahead and watch some of those videos. But I am going to just show you as a quick refresher. So the first thing it's going to tell you to do is set the safe area, the top left corner. So what you're going to do is you're going to remember that when you turn on QCT, suddenly QCT is in infinite space, let's say. Our little sewing machine is called Gracie, and she's in infinite space. But she's in infinite space, and she doesn't know where she is. So by setting the safe area, while we do use our quilt as part of our guide, we need to remember that really what we're doing is we're giving our sewing machine, which is in an infinite space, a reference point so she both knows where she is, but then we're also setting a boundary for her so she doesn't go off infinitely in any one direction. We need to tell her where the safe areas are for her to be. Like she can only work within this specified area. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to take my sewing machine and oopsie, I am going to go all the way up to the top, and I'm going to push. I want to be a little bit off of my backing, depending on how much of it I have. I'm going to push top left. I'm going to pause this just for a second so I can fix this camera. Okay, I think I'm back. I think I fixed the camera issue. Again, so when you're starting that, setting your safe area, you want to go all the way back. And for me, I have to push on the red snappers just a little bit. And if you have 4 or 5 inches on your quilt, extra batting and your sides, then you're safe to do that. But for me, I have just a little bit less than what I would like to have. And so I'm going to go off the edge of my fabric just a little bit, and I go all the way back, and I'm going to touch the top left, which I did. And now I'm going to go all the way down here I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom, and I want it to be over my fabric, so I may have to move my clamp. Okay, all the way as far as it will go, and I'm going to push the bottom right. And while I have used my quilt top to do this, it's important to recognize that what I have done is set up information for the software, and I used my quilt to guide me in doing that. Technically speaking, you could make the size of your safe area the same size as your frame. For our convenience and for the safety of the sewing machine, we use the quilt top and backing so that we tell QCT you can't sew any wider than this area right here. and because it's not safe for the sewing machine. But really what you're doing is setting up boundaries for the software. So it knows where it is in space and where it's allowed to be in space. So otherwise, QCT would feel like it could go anywhere. And we don't want it to be anywhere, or we want it to be in an area that is safe for the sewing machine. And how we pick that is by where you have fabric to sew on. So, okay, so now we're going to choose a pattern. I liked one down here that were flames someplace. Where was it? It might have been one of the other ones. So let's see. Leah Day. There it is, flames. This one is by Leah Day. I'm going to just say open. And as you can see, I went ahead and picked the flames, and it pulls up one pattern for us. And then I'm going to say next. And it's going to ask me the height design. And I know that if I go into information right here, it will tell me how big my safe area is. So what it has said that I have is my safe area is 44 3/8 wide. And again, that's not my quilt top size, that's my safe area size. And that it's 16.55 inches in depth right here. And so I don't want my pattern to be any bigger than probably 16 inches. And that would be very big for this pattern. So probably what I want to do is figure out how many, can I have 2 rows at least? So maybe even 3 with this pattern. So if I go, 16, and if I make it maybe 5 inches, that should be good. So I'm going to go ahead and change it to 5 inches. And now I'm going to say next. So now it looks like I have 2 rows, but I don't. This is only for spacing. So there are 2 rows right here, and I can adjust my spacing by these arrows right here. This is going to make them closer together. This is going to make them farther apart. And I think I like it just like that at -8 inch. I'm going to click next. And now I'm going to pick where on the quilt I'm at. You have 4 options when you have a rolling frame. You have the top of your quilt, and you can see those are the top edges. You have the middle, where you're in the middle of the quilt, and then you have when you get down to the edge. Then this one over here is if you're quilting space, maybe you have a table runner or something that's very small, and the whole area that you want to quilt fits in your safe space. That's what that one is for. But I'm at the top, so I'm going to pick that. Now we're at a picky part. This is where we're going to know if I actually have the edges of my quilt are far enough from my idle rail, or even if I have my fabric down too far. But we're going to now, it says set the quilt top edges. So I'm going to move my machine so that the needle is right at the very corner, and I can use this right here, the needle jog, to bring my needle down just a little bit to get a little bit more accurate. I'm going to test this one right here. And nothing, it didn't give me any messages, so it looks like I'm good. Then I'm going to bring it all the way far down, and I'm going to make sure that my needle is right on the edge, and I'm going to push that. I'm going to do the same for the other side. I'm going to have the needle right at the corner, and then I'm going to bring it on down. And then I can go to next. Now it says you're going to mark your placement. So you can do this with a pen. It always suggests a sticker. I'm going to tell you I don't recommend a sticker. Is if you're my student, as you will well know, stickers do not stay on batting. So you're going to want something to mark with, and let me get that something. Since it's in the batting, I don't always worry about what I'm going to use for placement, but a dry erase marker is something that has a long tip on it, and I do like to use that. So what it's going to do next is going to mark some placement notes for me. And the reason you do this is not placing your pattern. This is making some notes so that if something happens and you have an emergency shutdown, you can then place, you can use these notes to get started again. So now I have some options up here, and I'm going to say single stitch. It's going to take a stitch, and then it releases. And when it releases, I'm going to pull my machine just a little bit, and I'm going to mark right where that dot is. Now, I'm going to make sure it's not caught on anything, and I'm going to say move right. When it stops, I'm going to say single stitch. You'll hear that the machine releases. I'm just going to move my machine a little teeny weeny bit right where it went down. I'm going to place another mark. All right, then pull it away just a little bit. I know it's going to come back over here. And so I'm going to say next. Now it says move the needle near the start point and start stitching. That doesn't mean you need to move it exactly. You can see on your screen, the green dot is where it wants to start, and the red dot is where it's going to stop. And so I'm just going to move it to close to that. I'm going to hold my tail because now it's going to hold the bottom. So I'm going to say start stitching, and it's going to move to the real start point. So that was pretty close. And it takes a single stitch, and then I move the machine and pull my bobbin right here. And now I'm going to say next. And now I have the option to sew. Probably what should have done was do the settings. In the settings, in fact, let's just stop. Stop. So. I would have rather shown you in your settings, if you recall, your settings, you can set up how many stitches you want. Mine was already set probably control the 13. That's why I like to keep mine out. You're going to take a look at your stitching and make sure you've had it already. You would want to make sure your stitching and everything is good. I would run it ahead of time. So I'm not going to drop my stitches too much right now. And then if there was a problem with my stitches and the tension, you would want to stop them there. You can let stitch out and we'll be right back. Let's see if it will get back to my video. Okay, so it has stopped sewing. Let me see if it will go back to the camera. There we go. So I have reached the end of my sewing as demonstrated by QCT itself too. And so now what we need to do is QCT is going to give us some placement marks. So when it says check if your design stitched out correctly and then tap continue. So you hit continue. And it says pull the bobbin thread end. So we have not pulled the bobbin thread yet. So I'm going to pull my machine towards me. I'm going to grab a loop. I'm going to bring it back to close to where that thread is coming up. I'm going to say single stitch. I'm going to pull it back towards me, and there's going to be the bobbin thread. And you're going to want to cut both threads. And my bobbin thread. You can see that. All right. And then I'm going to be very good. I want to try and cut away any of the excess threads too, so that there's nothing for QCT in this machine to get hung up on. So if you see little danglies anywhere, this is a good time when the machine is stopped to go ahead and pull it out. While the machine was stitching, I went ahead and took out the basting thread that was in the middle of this zone. I removed it. Okay, so now I'm going to say next. QCT is going to move me. And I know it's way off my fabric. That's okay. It's not going to sew off the fabric, but it wants to mark off the fabric. And this is why we don't recommend, or I don't recommend, any stickers. So this is where we're going to make some marks. It's going to say, place a sticker on the fabric under the needle, and we don't really want to do that. We're going to use a marker instead. It says, tap the single stitch button to puncture the sticker. So single stitch. Now it has now released the sewing machine. I'm going to move my sewing machine just a little ways away, and right where it came through the fabric, I'm going to place a good old mark. Now I'm gonna say next. And the machine's gonna move all the way to the other side. And again, it's off the quilt. That's okay. That's all right. I'm expecting that. It's not gonna sew way out here, but I'm gonna say single stitch. It made that stitch. I'm gonna pull it just away a little bit. You're right where that punctured, I'm gonna make another mark. So that is when we say, when we're making our marks or we're putting our placement marks, that's what these are. Those two marks that we just made, those are the placement marks. So now I'm gonna click next. It's gonna say, set the left placement mark. So what we need to do is now move the needle over the next placement mark hole. You see where this is? So we don't need to move our fabric yet because we can get yet another row inside this zone. So now I want to make sure that it's exactly over that mark I just made. And I'm going to click the button right here, that green node right up at the top. That's what it's asking me to do. That was set the left placement. Now I'm going to bring my machine all the way over here and find that other mark that I made, that right mark, which is right here. And I'm going to, on the screen where this green node is, the gray node, once I touch it, it will turn green. And now both of those nodes, the left and the right, are placed. Now my pattern is placed. Okay, I'm gonna move over a little bit further because I know it's gonna start from this side, and I'm just gonna hit next. All right, it says move the needle bar close, or the needle to close to where it's gonna start. And I'm thinking it's probably gonna start, I don't have to be exact, because QCT will know right where it's gonna start. And I'm gonna say start stitching, and it will move exactly to where it needs to start into a single stitch. I'm gonna pull my bobbin. Just give it long. And then I'm gonna say next. And then I'm gonna go ahead. I wanna show you, this is what I should have done in the other screen before I actually started quilting, but I'd already set it up. This is where your settings are. And this is where you can decide how many tie-offs you want and how many stitches per inch you want. And you do, at every time you get to this screen, you do have the opportunity to change that if you want. But I'm gonna leave it just the way it was. I wanted to show where it was. Say okay, and I'm gonna hit sew. All right. I'm going to pause it and tell me this end again. Okay, so we reached the end of the second row. It has stopped stitching. So I'm going to say continue. And it's going to tell me pull the end of the bottom thread. So again, I'm going to pull the machine towards me or away from it, doesn't really matter which direction, so that I can get a good tail of thread right here. Good tail going down. I'm going to move it back to where, as close as I can to where the thread is coming up, and I'll hit the single stitch. And then I'm going to pull it again away from me so that I can get the loop of the bobbin thread. And sometimes it helps to pull it out like that. And you're going to break your bobbin thread and your top thread. Make sure you have enough of a tail to keep it going. And then you're going to say next. Okay, so this is again is a placement mark. So I'm going to say single stitch. and it's going to release the machine. I'm going to move it back just a little bit, and wherever it pierced that string without the fabric right there, I'm going to put the dot. Now I can move this if I want. It's called, there we go, closer and make it go faster by moving it over here myself, and then saying next, because it wants to place the other placement node. I'm going to say single stitch, and it releases the machine. I'm going to pull it back just a little bit, and I'm going to mark it really well so I can find it again, and then I'm going to hit next. And now it says it's time to move the fabric. It says tap OK after you have moved it and are ready to proceed. So I am going to move my fabric. Move my side clamps. I'm releasing the rollers, the clamps, and moving it on up. Now, it's interesting because I thought it was going to do something. I'm going to say, okay. But now it's going to show me this window right here where I'm going to pick the center one because I'm not at the top of the quilt anymore. I'm going to pick the center one. And now it's going to ask me for the edges of this quilt. And again, I might use my needle jog so I can get the needle like as close to that edge, and I'm going to hit these buttons right here. Hit the notes on your QCT. And you know that you selected them when they turn green. And I've forgotten if I said my song, I didn't want to do that. Now, and I have intentionally not moved this fabric up very far in the hose, but it will give us an error message so you can see what would happen if you roll your fabric a little bit too close to the bar. So let's see if that's going to happen. So now I'm going to say next. You must first set all the edge points. I did. Okay. Next. So, I'm just resetting that for some reason. It reset itself. I must have hit the reset button. Okay. Now next. All right. Now it's asking me to place the pattern. So now I'm looking for those marks that I made. And let me see if I can find them. Let's see underneath here. That one's right there. Here it is. That's right here. So I'm going to hit this button. So, okay, I'm going to hit. I was not too far down. Let me show you what happened if I had been a little bit too far up. Reset. If I had put it too far up, if I had gotten my node too close to the bar, or if I had not had it far enough up, apparently you are attempting to place your design outside the safe area. You will get this message if you don't have your mark close enough or too far away from the idler rail. So just understand that that's all it's asking you to do. You might have to reposition your fabric just a little bit. I'm going to say, okay, here we go. So when you put the marks on, that is what is called placing your pattern. So when you have placed your pattern, after touching QCT, that's called placing a pattern. All right, so both nodes are now green. I have moved my fabric. It's going to tell me to pull my bobbin. So I'm going to say next. I want to move it close to where I think it's going to start stitching. It will go to the exact start point. There we go, release. I'm going to pull up that bobbin thread. And I'm going to hit next. And again, if I needed to change anything, the stitches per inch, I could do that in the settings, but I'm going to tap sew. I will probably get 2 good rows out of this. I might even get 3 since I made it 5 inches. And this is not supposed to be a whole course, so I'm going to end the video here. But all you need to do is continue in that manner until you got the end of your quilt, and then you would select that picture that showed you the bottom edge of your quilt, the one that is at the bottom edge, and you would finish from that end. So I hope this is a good refresher for us, and thanks for watching.